In this village lives a young woman named Frieda. The greatest sorrow of her life is that she cannot have children. And because of this, she is constantly judged and looked down upon by the people around her. Her husband does everything he can to comfort her, but it's not as if they haven't tried. The problem lies with Frieda herself, making it impossible for her to become pregnant. Even so, Frieda refuses to lose faith. She regularly visits the church and prays to God every single day, hoping for a miracle that will allow her to bring a child into the world. Driven by desperation, she ventures toward the forest near the village, a place everyone believes is cursed. The villagers have tied ropes and hung crosses along its borders because they believe a supernatural force dwells inside, and anyone who enters never returns the same person again. Despite the terrifying stories, Frieda takes the risk and crosses the boundary to collect a rare herb that is rumored to cure infertility. Fearful of what might be lurking in the woods, she hurriedly gathers the plants and rushes back, all while strange and chilling whispers continue to echo behind her from deep within the forest. By evening, the villagers gather to decide the fate of a man named Gilo. He has been accused of trying to force himself on Sasha, one of the village women and Frieda's close friend. However, because Jallo is an influential figure in the community, the villagers choose to overlook the seriousness of his crime, and in the end, they forgive him. Frieda then brings the herbs to the village priest, Romo, who also happens to be her father. She asks him to prepare the medicine once again. Although they have already tried this remedy many times before without any success, Frieda refuses to give up. She firmly believes that God will eventually reward her faith and perseverance. Romo agrees to her request and begins preparing the medicine once more. Afterward, Frieda visits her friend Sasha, who has been completely devastated by what happened. Sasha tells her that living in the village is worse than death, and that she would rather disappear forever into the cursed forest and its endless fog. Frieda tries to reassure her, saying that God does not see her the way the villagers do, but Sasha has already lost all faith, even in God himself. Sometime later, Frieda is helping Galo distribute meat among the villagers, but when it is Sasha's turn, Galo once again tries to humiliate her by giving her a smaller portion. Frieda refuses to go along with his cruelty and secretly hands Sasha some extra meat instead. The gesture enrages Gilo. He suddenly lunges at Frieda, but she manages to defend herself. Then Galo crosses every line by making a disgusting remark, claiming that he could help Frieda get pregnant if she agrees to sleep with him. Furious and disgusted, Frieda grabs Sasha and immediately walks away. Meanwhile, Gilo is left seething with anger after being publicly humiliated. As the next step in Frieda's treatment, her father Romo prays for her. He prepares a bowl filled with a mixture of medicinal herbs and instructs her to mix it with her own urine before burying the bowl in a safe place. He explains that if worms appear in the urine by the next day, it would mean her condition has not been cured and that she is still unable to conceive. But little by little, Frieda's husband, Hai, begins to change. After waiting so many years for a child, he has grown exhausted and frustrated. He keeps staring suspiciously at the buried bowl. Frieda then tells him that the meat they are eating came from a pregnant pig because her father believes it could help solve their fertility problem. Hearing this, Hai becomes irritated and firmly says that no one should imply the problem lies with him. In his eyes, Frieda is the only one responsible for their inability to have a child. With that, he storms off. A short while later, Frieda notices him talking to another woman. The sight breaks her heart, but she remains silent because deep down, she understands that Hai desperately wants a child too. Frieda eventually buries the bowl near the edge of the forest. However, almost immediately, she begins to feel a strange and irresistible pull toward the fog-covered woods. Even though she knows the forest is extremely dangerous, she can't ignore the feeling. Just then, the same creepy man, Gilo, appears behind her once again. At first, Frieda is too terrified to enter the forest. Suddenly, flocks of birds burst out from the trees and fly away in panic, as if something horrifying is chasing them. But Galo keeps moving closer, leaving Frieda with no choice except to run into the woods. She believes Jallo will stay back out of fear, knowing the forest is cursed, but his lust has blinded him so completely that he no longer cares about the terrifying legends surrounding the place. Eventually, Gallo catches up to Frieda, and his true monstrous nature is revealed once again. He tries to force himself on her, but Frieda fights with every ounce of strength she has to save her life. Her resistance only makes Gallo even more violent, and he wraps his hands around her throat, slowly choking her. Just as Frieda is about to lose consciousness, An absolutely horrifying moment unfolds. Out of nowhere, a mysterious force suddenly intervenes, brutally kills Gilo, and drags his body away into the darkness. Frozen with fear, Frieda doesn't even dare look back. All she can hear are Yellow's agonizing screams echoing through the forest. Even in her weakened condition, she desperately crawls away, trying to escape. But then the same mysterious force grabs her as well. From the darkness, a strange and terrifying entity slowly emerges. Surprisingly, however, the entity doesn't attack Frieda. It simply hovers over her for a few moments before disappearing back into the shadows. Even so, Frieda remains lying in the forest, terrified and completely stunned by what she has witnessed. Sometime later, still shaken to her core, Frieda finally makes it back to the village. At the church, her father is delivering a sermon to the villagers. Crying uncontrollably, she tries to tell him what happened. But before she can say a single word, she suddenly collapses and loses consciousness. Frieda is brought back home, but strange things soon start happening to her. Late at night, she begins hearing eerie noises echoing through the house. As she grabs a candle and slowly walks toward the source of the sound, the front door suddenly swings open on its own. The candle instantly goes out, and in the darkness she sees a woman with long white hair standing silently in front of her. Frieda freezes in terror, but then someone knocks on the door and she suddenly wakes up, realizing it was only a nightmare. Just then, an angry woman from the village accuses Frieda of breaking the village's sacred rule by entering the cursed forest. She warns that because of Frieda's actions, not only she but the entire village will now suffer the curse. The strangest part is that Frieda came back alive. Until now, not a single woman who entered that forest had ever returned. Because of this, the villager becomes convinced that Frieda must have made a deal with the devil lurking in the woods and demands that she be banished from the village. Frieda herself starts feeling as if something inside the forest is protecting her. Determined to uncover the truth, she decides to return once again. Following the ropes tied around the forest as guides, she carefully makes her way deeper inside. Along the path, the ropes begin swaying on their own, but despite her fear, she keeps moving forward. At the same time, the villagers are forced to enter the forest to search for Gilo. Romo accompanies them, believing his prayers will keep everyone safe. During the search, they discovered Yellow's body, horribly torn apart. Shockingly, he is still barely alive. Terrified, the villagers believe this can only be the work of the devil. To stop the evil from spreading, Romo orders them to burn Gallo's body immediately. But the moment they set it on fire, horrifying screams erupt from every corner of the forest. The atmosphere becomes so terrifying that everyone panics and runs for their lives. Taking advantage of the chaos, Frieda continues deeper into the woods. But little by little, she seems to fall into some kind of trance. For a brief moment, she catches a glimpse of the forest's true inhabitants lurking in the darkness. Then terrifying sounds begin echoing all around her, forcing Frieda to run away in fear. A short while later, she sees Hiko praying, while repeatedly claiming that Frieda has joined forces with the devil. As he speaks, his voice gradually becomes deeper and more sinister. Suddenly, the sight of that same white-haired woman appears before Frieda once again. She jolts awake and realizes that this, too, was nothing more than another horrifying nightmare. Now Frieda starts wondering if she really made a deal with the devil. At first, the thought terrifies her. A devoted believer in God, Frieda becomes convinced that she has betrayed her faith. Desperate for guidance, she prays to God for forgiveness and direction. But her father, Romo, overhears everything. In a stern voice, he tells her that by joining hands with the devil, she has committed a terrible sin. And because of her actions, a curse has now fallen upon the entire village. Frieda begs him to help her find her way back to God. But Romo coldly replies, "You already know what you must do to pay for your sins." A short time later, with complete devotion, Frieda begins whipping herself before God as an act of punishment and repentance. Just then, Hako arrives and says that he will also help her atone for her sins. Frieda agrees, but Hako beats her with shocking brutality, as if he is venting all of his anger on her. Unable to endure the pain any longer, she stumbles out of the house. Sasha wants to help her, but her father stops her. Everyone in the village begins treating Frieda as if she has betrayed God himself. Even her own father, Romo, shuts the door the moment he sees her. Feeling completely abandoned and alone, Frieda breaks down in tears. Her situation gets even worse when she checks the hidden bowl of urine she had been keeping and discovers that it is once again crawling with worms. It means the treatment has completely failed for a second time. Now Frieda starts believing that even God has abandoned her. Then, without warning, smoke begins rising from the bowl, making the atmosphere even more terrifying. At that very moment, Frieda feels the same strange pull toward the forest again. As if controlled by an unseen force, she slowly walks deeper into the woods. She reaches the place filled with skulls, drops to her knees, and instead of praying to God, she begins praying to the mysterious powers of the forest. The distant screams only add to her growing fear. But moments later, those screams are joined by the sound of massive, heavy footsteps. Suddenly, a horrifying entity appears right in front of her. Its body doesn't look human at all. It seems to be made entirely of twisted branches and tangled tree limbs. The creature stares at Frieda without blinking. Then all of a sudden, it forces something into her body, causing her to collapse to the ground. From that very moment, the entity takes control of Frieda and begins performing a bizarre ritual that connects her directly to the forest and the dark supernatural forces that dwell within it. During the ritual, Frieda witnesses several horrifying visions. Among them, she sees a mysterious woman dressed in white. It seems as if the ceremony is somehow curing Frieda's infertility. The next morning when she wakes up, she is shocked to find that her stomach has grown abnormally large, as if she has become several months pregnant in just a single night. The dream Frieda had longed for her entire life finally appears to have come true. She returns to the village once again, but everyone stares at her with suspicion, unable to believe that she actually survived. There she discovers that Hiko has married the very woman she saw him with earlier, believing Frieda was dead. Hiko bluntly tells her that there is no longer any place for her in the house, but Frieda stands her ground and insists they can find a way to live together before walking inside anyway. That night, Frieda realizes just how hypocritical the village men truly are. As Romo and the others drink, they describe Gelo's death as a holy one, claiming he has gone to God's paradise. Furious, Frieda argues that Gelo merely received punishment for his sins, but the villagers only laughed at her. Later, Frieda tells her friend Sasha that they should stop obeying the men because the entire society has been built only to suppress women. A few days later, Sasha invites Frieda to a prayer gathering at the church. During the service, Romo notices his daughter's unusual behavior and calls her to the front to recite the prayer before everyone. Frieda tries to speak, but it feels as though some unseen force is preventing her from finishing the words. Suddenly, she vomits in front of the congregation, revealing to the villagers that she is pregnant. When they notice the strange markings covering her swollen belly, everyone is left stunned. How could the woman they once called barren suddenly be expecting a child? Instead of calling it a miracle, however, their suspicions grow even stronger. They accuse her of carrying not a human baby, but the child of the devil. Frieda denies all the accusations and insists that her baby is a miracle from God. Sasha also tries to defend her, saying that Frieda's prayers have finally been answered, but no one believes them. The entire village demands punishment in one voice, and eventually Frieda is tied up and locked inside a prison cell. Frieda desperately struggles to free herself, but the guard silences her by calling her a witch. After a while, the guard leaves, and Hiko arrives at his place. He tells Frieda that Romo plans to starve her to death, so the devil inside her body will eventually leave. However, Hiko offers another solution. He says he can save her if she gives up her unborn child. According to him, evil must be destroyed at its very root. Hearing this, Frieda immediately refuses and declares that she will never abandon her baby. But then Hiko pulls out a knife and repeatedly claims that God himself has commanded him to do this. Frieda breaks down in fear and begs him not to kill her child. Still, Hiko keeps insisting that the baby must die. At the very last second, Frieda somehow manages to break free from the ropes, while Hiko continues trying to stab her in the stomach. Suddenly, she grabs his arm with an unnatural force. Her strength is nothing like that of an ordinary human. At the same time, Frieda's face begins transforming into something demonic. Hiko is so terrified that he drops his torch, setting the prison ablaze. For several moments, he can hear Frieda's agonizing screams echoing through the flames. Then, without warning, everything falls completely silent. The fire mysteriously extinguishes itself, and Frieda escapes. Soon afterward, the entire village chases her into the forest. In the darkness, an invisible force seems to be protecting Frieda, but despite its efforts, she is captured once again. Romo orders Hiko to kill both Frieda and the unborn child growing inside her, believing that only then will the devil be destroyed forever. But just then, a horrifying scream echoes through the forest, and several villagers are dragged away by an unseen force. Frieda tightly grabs Hiko's arm and declares that no one will ever lay a hand on her child again. She then unleashes a terrifying scream so powerful that it hurls Hiko straight into a tree, tearing his body apart on impact. Witnessing this gruesome scene, the terrified villagers flee the forest, while Romo shouts that Frieda herself has become the devil. Sasha hears everything, but without caring about anyone else, she walks alone into the forest, perhaps because she still considers Frieda her friend. Meanwhile, Frieda finally encounters the mysterious entity that has been watching over her. It slowly reveals its true form, eventually transforming into the same white-haired woman Frieda had seen in her dreams. The woman gently approaches Frieda and places her hand on her stomach, as if recognizing the child growing inside her. For the first time, fear disappears from Frieda's face and is replaced by a sense of peace. The woman then leads Frieda into the other world, and Frieda willingly follows. After enduring endless pain, rejection, and loneliness at the hands of humans, she chooses the darkness over humanity and becomes a permanent part of that mysterious realm. In the end, the story suggests that the real monsters are not always hiding in the woods. They often live among people. Sometimes the darkness itself can seem like a safer refuge than the cruelty of humanity. And with that, the movie comes to an end. Subscribe to the channel for more horror